The modern mind is a restless ocean, churning with waves of worry, speculation, and endless mental chatter. We find ourselves caught in spirals of thought that lead nowhere, replaying conversations that have already ended, rehearsing scenarios that may never come to pass, and analyzing situations until they lose all meaning. This perpetual mental motion exhausts us, drains our vitality, and distances us from the peace that is our natural birthright. Yet within the ancient wisdom of yoga, particularly as taught by Paramahansa Yogananda, lies a profound solution that takes mere seconds to implement, but can transform the entire landscape of our inner world. Before we begin, let's pause the moment. Like this video, comment below about your thought, and hit subscribe button to Inner Wisdom so you don't miss any video inspired by Yogananda. Let's discover together. Yogananda, who brought the teachings of Kriya Yoga to the West in the early 20th century, understood the affliction of the overthinking mind with remarkable clarity. He recognized that the human tendency toward excessive mental activity was not merely a psychological quirk, but a fundamental obstacle to spiritual realization and everyday happiness. In his teachings, he offered numerous techniques for quieting the mind, but among them was a particularly elegant method that could be employed anywhere, at any time, requiring nothing more than a half-minute of focused attention. The technique itself is disarmingly simple, yet its simplicity should not be mistaken for superficiality. Yogananda taught that when the mind becomes entangled in the thorns of overthinking, we should immediately shift our attention to the point between the eyebrows, known in yogic tradition as the spiritual eye or the seat of concentration. This point, called the Ajna Chakra or the Christ Center, is considered the gateway to higher consciousness and the command center of the mind. By focusing our awareness here with gentle but firm attention, we interrupt the cascading patterns of thought that have taken control of our mental space. The practice begins with a simple recognition. When you notice that your mind has become caught in a loop of overthinking, when you observe yourself mentally rehearsing the same argument for the 10th time or worrying about an outcome you cannot control, you pause. This pause itself is revolutionary. Most people are so identified with their thoughts that they cannot distinguish between themselves and the mental activity occurring within them. They believe they are their thoughts, rather than recognizing themselves as the awareness that observes thoughts. The moment you notice overthinking, you have already created a small gap between your true self and the mental turbulence. In that moment of recognition, you gently close your eyes if circumstances permit, or simply soften your gaze if you are in a situation where closing your eyes is impractical. You then direct your attention upward and inward to the point between the eyebrows. This is not a physical straining or crossing of the eyes, but rather a mental focusing, as though you were looking at a distant star on the horizon of your inner sky. The eyes may naturally turn slightly upward beneath closed lids, but there should be no tension, no forcing, no uncomfortable pressure. As you hold your attention at this point, you take a slow, deep breath, drawing the air in through your nostrils with full awareness. Yogananda emphasized the profound connection between breath and mind, teaching that the two are inextricably linked. When the breath is agitated, the mind is agitated. When the breath becomes calm and rhythmic, the mind naturally follows. This is not mere philosophy but observable fact. Notice how your breathing becomes shallow and irregular when you are anxious or overthinking, and how it deepens and steadies when you are at peace. With this conscious inhalation, you are not merely filling your lungs with air. You are drawing in life force, what the yogis call prana, the vital energy that animates all living things. Yogananda taught that this prana is the bridge between body and mind, between the physical and spiritual dimensions of our being. By consciously directing the breath, we gain access to deeper layers of our existence, layers that remain untouched by the surface turbulence of overthinking. As you inhale, you might silently affirm a word or phrase that resonates with peace. Yogananda often suggested simple affirmations such as peace or I am calm. The word itself matters less than the intention behind it and the feeling you invest in it. You are not merely repeating a word mechanically, but are calling forth from the depths of your being the quality that the word represents. You are reminding yourself of what you truly are beneath the layers of mental noise. Then comes the exhalation, equally important as the inhalation. You release the breath slowly, smoothly, allowing it to flow out like a gentle stream. With this exhalation, you consciously release the tension, the worry, the overthinking itself. You imagine the mental turbulence flowing out with the breath, leaving your inner space clear and still. This is not suppression of thoughts, but rather a letting go, a relaxation of the grip that overthinking has established in your consciousness. Throughout these 30 seconds, your attention remains anchored at the point between the eyebrows. This focal point serves as an anchor for your awareness, preventing it from being swept away again by the currents of thought. Yogananda explained that this center is associated with the element of light and with higher perception. When we concentrate here, we naturally elevate our consciousness above the realm of restless thinking into a space of greater clarity and peace. The beauty of this technique lies not only in its brevity but in its accessibility. You need no special equipment, no particular setting, no extended period of time. Whether you are sitting at your desk overwhelmed by work concerns, lying in bed unable to sleep because of racing thoughts, standing in line at the grocery store replaying a difficult conversation, or walking down the street anxious about the future, you can employ this method. 30 seconds is available to everyone, always. What happens in those 30 seconds is a kind of reset of the nervous system and the mind. Modern neuroscience has begun to confirm what yogis have known for millennia: that focused attention, conscious breathing, and specific points of concentration can rapidly alter brain states. When we engage in this practice, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which governs rest and relaxation, while quieting the sympathetic nervous system, which drives the fight-or-flight response often underlying overthinking. We shift from beta brainwaves, associated with active thinking and sometimes anxiety, toward alpha waves, associated with relaxed alertness, and potentially even theta waves, associated with deep meditation and creativity. But Yogananda's teaching goes beyond the physiological benefits, profound as they are. He understood this technique as a doorway to spiritual awakening. The point between the eyebrows is not merely a convenient focal point, but a portal to higher consciousness. When we regularly practice concentrating here, we begin to develop what Yogananda called the single eye that Christ spoke of when he said, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." This single eye is the unified perception that sees beyond the dualities and conflicts that fuel overthinking. Overthinking, in Yogananda's view, is a symptom of a deeper problem: the identification of consciousness with the limited ego self. When we believe ourselves to be merely this body, this personality, this collection of memories and concerns, we naturally fall into patterns of worry and excessive analysis. We feel vulnerable, separate, and constantly under threat. The mind then becomes a defensive mechanism, endlessly strategizing, planning, and ruminating in an attempt to protect this fragile sense of self. The 30-second technique interrupts this identification. In those moments of focused attention at the spiritual eye, combined with conscious breathing, we touch something deeper than the ego. We experience, however briefly, our nature as pure awareness, as consciousness itself, which is never threatened, never diminished, never truly affected by the circumstances that so occupy our thinking minds. This experience, repeated regularly, begins to transform our relationship with thought itself. We start to see thoughts as events occurring within consciousness rather than as the totality of who we are. We develop what might be called witness consciousness, the ability to observe our mental activity without being consumed by it. This does not mean we stop thinking altogether or that we become passive and disengaged from life. Rather, we learn to use thought as a tool when needed, rather than being used by it. We think when thinking is appropriate and useful, and we rest in awareness when thinking is merely spinning its wheels. Yogananda emphasized that this practice should be done with a spirit of devotion and love, not merely as a mechanical technique. When we turn our attention to the spiritual eye, we are not just focusing on a point in space but are turning toward the divine presence within us. Whether we conceive of this presence as God, as our higher self, as universal consciousness, or simply as the peace that passes understanding, we are acknowledging something greater than our small, worried, overthinking self. This attitude of devotion transforms the practice from a stress reduction technique into a form of prayer, a communion with the deepest truth of our being. We are not just calming our minds, we are remembering who we really are. We are returning home to the peace that is always present beneath the surface agitation, the peace that Yogananda often described as our true nature. The effects of this 30-second practice extend far beyond the moments of its application. When we use this technique regularly throughout the day, whenever we notice overthinking arising, we begin to rewire our habitual patterns. The neural pathways associated with rumination and worry gradually weaken, while new pathways associated with present moment awareness and inner peace strengthen. We become less reactive, less prone to being swept away by every thought that arises. Moreover, we develop a kind of mental hygiene, a practice of regularly clearing the accumulated debris of excessive thinking before it can solidify into chronic stress, anxiety, or depression. Just as we brush our teeth daily to prevent decay, we can use this technique multiple times daily to prevent the decay of our peace of mind. The cumulative effect of these brief interventions is profound, far greater than their individual duration might suggest. Yogananda also taught that this practice naturally leads to deeper meditation. When we have trained ourselves to quickly access a state of inner focus and calm through this 30-second technique, we create a foundation for longer periods of meditation. The mind that has learned to settle quickly in brief moments throughout the day will settle more easily when we sit for formal meditation practice. The spiritual eye that we have repeatedly visited in short intervals becomes a familiar destination, easier to reach and remain in. In our contemporary world, where distractions multiply exponentially and the pace of life accelerates relentlessly, the wisdom of this ancient technique becomes ever more relevant. We are bombarded with information, stimulation, and demands on our attention. Our minds have become accustomed to constant activity, jumping from one thing to another, never resting, always processing. This chronic mental hyperactivity has become so normalized that we often do not recognize it as a problem until it manifests as burnout, anxiety disorders, or a pervasive sense of disconnection from life. Yogananda's 30-second technique offers an antidote that is proportionate to our modern predicament. It does not require us to retreat from the world or to carve out hours from our busy schedules. It meets us where we are, in the midst of our daily lives, and offers a way to touch peace without abandoning our responsibilities. It is a practice for householders and professionals, for parents and students, for anyone who must navigate the complexities of modern existence while seeking to maintain inner equilibrium. The practice also cultivates what might be called spiritual momentum. Each time we pause to focus at the spiritual eye and calm our breath, we are making a choice for peace over chaos, for awareness over automaticity, for our higher nature over our conditioned patterns. These choices accumulate. They build upon one another, creating a trajectory toward greater consciousness and freedom. What begins as a simple technique for managing overthinking gradually becomes a way of life, a continuous remembrance of our true nature. Ultimately, Yogananda's teaching points us toward a profound truth, that peace is not something we must create or achieve, but something we must simply allow. It is always present, always available, obscured only by the clouds of our own mental activity. The 30-second technique is not so much a method for generating peace as it is a method for removing the obstacles to the peace that already exists within us. By focusing at the spiritual eye, by consciously breathing, by pausing the machinery of overthinking, we create a small opening through which our natural peace can shine forth. This is the gift that Yogananda offered to a world desperately in need of calm. Not a complex system requiring years of study, not an esoteric practice available only to the initiated, but a simple, accessible technique that anyone can use at any moment to return to themselves, to touch the stillness at their core, and to remember that beneath all the noise and turbulence of the thinking mind, they are and have always been fundamentally at peace.